Because what happens is too often at work, you complain about your spouse. At home, you complain about your job. And so early on, I realized that there's only two things I can control: how I think and how I feel. You can't control the weather. You can't control politics. You certainly can't control what's happening anywhere else except how you react to it.
Welcome to the Getting the Deal Done podcast. I'm John Martinka, and our special guest today is David Schnurman. David is the owner of Lawline. He is the author of the book 11 Suitcases, which is one of the lessons we're going to go over today, which is how international travel can help overcome fear and doubt. He will also give us some business lessons and talk about the fast forward mindset. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me, John.
Let's start with a little bit about your background and how you got to be into what you're doing now.
So I have always wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was probably 10 years old. That was my dream. I used to be the kid who would walk into Staples and pretend like I had a business, and I would have a shopping cart and I'd put all these business items in the shopping cart, and then I would just walk out of the store. There was no internet at the time, so I guess that's what I did to entertain myself. But with all that said, I graduated college and thought I would have $1 million business within a year. And I was working as a sales assistant, making less than $30,000. And within 5 years, I was in my third or fourth sales job and figuring out like, oh, being an entrepreneur is much harder than I thought. And I had this decision I had to make. I can continue on the sales route or figure out a different career path. And I realized maybe entrepreneurship wasn't for me. And I decided to go to law school. And because in law school, I figured I could have an impact, be a lawyer, and have a career for the next 20 years. While in law school, I started, dare I say, the first podcast that existed in 2006. I was interviewing entrepreneurs about how to start my business or a business because I still had the dream. One of the first interviews I did was with Simon Sinek, who has the book Start With Why. And I learned, he was an amazing person to get started from. And I had this idea, instead of interviewing entrepreneurs while in law school, what if I interviewed lawyers, turn those interviews into courses, and then sell those courses because it was mandatory for lawyers to take courses to keep their license. And that was 2006. And pretty much haven't looked back since.
Okay. So, one of the things I like about hosting a podcast is the variety of guests and all the different things they have done to be successful. So, and in your case, I want to start out with your book, 11 Suitcases. Let's talk about that a little bit. As you said before, and I announced it. Oh, how international travel can help overcome fear and doubt.
Well, just to take a step back, I have three kids, and we moved to Barcelona and packed 11 suitcases in 2019. And how did we do that? Well, we talked about in the beginning, and maybe before we started recording, one of the things that we did without realizing it, we created something that was intentional. So in 2015, I had three kids, 6 years old and under. I don't know. Do you have kids?
I have four.
Okay, so you can probably relate to this. So we had three kids. We had twins who were six, and then a 1 year old. We were struggling just with bedtime routine. We were struggling in the morning, and we sought out help from friends. And there's this book that you might have heard of. It's called Three Big Questions for a Frantic Family. And if you haven't heard about it, it's written by the same author as Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And the
Okay.
reason he wrote it is he has four kids as well. And so he took all the things that you usually apply to business, mission, vision, values, and you applied it to your family. And I thought that was so cool because like you don't have a toolkit of how do you be a good parent. And so the number one thing question you asked is that in order to get through the struggle of putting your kids to bed, you need to have a vision of where you want to be in 10 years from now. And we sat around and thought about what that was and where we wanted to be. And the last thing that we said, because it was a passion of mine, was experiencing life through travel. It didn't mean anything at the time. So 2025, we wanted to experience life through travel. I ended up telling some people about that, and I met somebody who just came back from living in Barcelona with his family for a year. So for 4 years, we talked about it. Like, oh my God, can we actually, hit our vision by moving to Barcelona and traveling more? And then in 2019, our twins were going from elementary school to middle school. I was going through maybe what you call midlife rut. And we decided to take a leap of faith, follow my friend's path, and then pack those 11 suitcases. And so the reason I told you that backstory is before even like what lessons we learned from being abroad, the first lesson that I learned even getting there is like when I set a vision in 2015, I was just setting a vision to travel more, not to move to Barcelona. But by setting that vision and telling people about it has a direct correlation to me packing those 11 suitcases and moving to Barcelona. And I just wanted to like take a step back and just be clear how that ended up happening.
So what did you learn from that?
So why we went is we wanted to travel more. We arrived, and the first thing that I felt, dare I say, was imposter syndrome because you meet all these people who've been traveling all over the world. And I came from Brooklyn. That was my first place living abroad with my family. And I felt like maybe I was a little out of my element. And then early on, the dean of the kids' school gave a speech to new parents. And at that speech, I felt like he was talking directly to me. And he said, this year you're gonna feel like maybe like the new kid in middle school who like is sitting at a table by himself in a cafeteria. And he's like, what you need to do is this year you're going to be invited to WhatsApp groups. You're going to be invited to book clubs that are in Spanish. You're going to be invited to hikes that you think are too hard. You're going to be invited to trips to cities that you can't pronounce. And you have one job, regardless if you're tired, if you want to just stay home and order takeout, your job is to say yes. Because by saying yes is how you get the most out of the mess and the magic of being abroad and fulfilling all that. And so uh, the first lesson was I was able to switch my thinking from feeling like an imposter to saying yes to getting the most out of why we went in the first place. And that speech not only transformed my experience over those 2 years, has transformed it ever since. In fact, that was going to be the original title of the book until I learned there was another book that was out called The Year of Yes by Shonda Rhimes. And so it's just the chapter. But so that was another example of being intentional to create a more fulfillful experience for myself and my
Okay.
family.
Has that helped you with Lawline?
I have always focused on self-help. As an example, this is a book that has transformed my life. It's called The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. He also wrote The Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Hmm.
And it
Yep.
has, I don't know, 80, 100 principles in here. And it's how to get from where you are to where you want to be. And the no, number one, the first principle in the book is take 100% responsibility for your life. And I thought this book was so powerful to me, I would actually read some of these principles out to people in my company on a regular basis because I want to help inspire them. Because what happens is too often at work, you complain about your spouse. At home, you complain about your job. And so early on, I realized that there's only two things I can control, how I think and how I feel. You can't control the weather, you can't control politics, you certainly can't control what's happening anywhere else except how you react to it. And so I would like to think from an early stage, I was able to apply the 100% responsibility and saying yes and how I react to that. In the fast forward mindset, I compiled probably my 30 favorite and most popular self-improvement books into one book and combined it with my experience. And another way of saying yes is the phrase good thing, bad thing, who knows? Have you ever heard that phrase, John?
I have not.
Okay, so we tend to label a situation bad about 10 times more than we label it good. And as soon as you label the situation bad, for example, if I thought this podcast, I wasn't doing a good job as an example, right? And I labeled it, I'm doing a bad job, I start experience it as doing bad. And when you say good thing, bad thing, who knows, you're you're taking it from labeling it bad to saying, I don't know, maybe it was a good thing, maybe it was a bad thing, who knows? And when you do that, you're able to make decisions and say yes to more things because even if you don't have the consequence or the outcome that you want, you're still able to do it. It's not I'm not perfect at that, but it when I moved to Barcelona, that in itself was a big risk. I was running a business, we have 35 people in person in one office, and I was leaving them to literally be the one remote employee in a different country at that time because it was 7 months before COVID until we all became remote employees.
Okay. So I just got to say that's fascinating what you did, and you moved away for 2 years with like 3 dozen people in your company and uh, all of that. So in general, you've built your business. I mean, you've got 3 dozen employees or had 3 dozen employees. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned besides the you know, is it good, is it bad, say yes, etc.
I mean, I think for me, I've always been somebody who had no problem taking action on things. Like I take action, 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 but I'm also that typical entrepreneur who takes action and then potentially can move on to the next thing pretty quickly. Um, and so it becomes challenging as a leader when my employees are like, "Is this the thing, or is he going to move on from to the next thing?" And many times when you take action and you haven't fully planned it out or focused on it, very soon thereafter you might be like, "Oh my God!" As an example, I just invested $500,000 in building a new studio or buying a company or leaving my career. And then soon after you're like, oh my God, or moving to Barcelona and like I made a mistake. What have I done? And so what I've learned are some techniques to help you get through that fear when you take action and then to help you keep on that path. So I can share some of those if that's of value.
Yeah, why don't you share a few?
So the he, what I think is really important is I don't know, have you ever been in a situation where you feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and you just like you can't break out of it like from business, I would say.
Oh yeah, and I think a lot of small business owners would identify, or people who are, say, the finance people in a small business, because you're always worried, am I going to make payroll next week? That yeah,
Yep.
that can be, is this customer going to pay us on time so I can pay my people?
I'm curious when you're like I've had moments and situations throughout my career where it, I can be sitting next to my wife and her life is fine and I just feel like I can't get through it and I'm so struggling so much. And then, through different self-improvement books and other research, I was like, what can I do at this moment to break through it? Because people need that. And there's a couple things that I share in the fast forward mindset. I'll share some of my favorites with you. And by the way, nothing I'm saying here is going to be like, because like you've heard them before in many different ways, but you need to reinforce some of these things. And so one of the things that there was a book called The Complaint-Free World. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And in the book, um, he poses this challenge to wear like a bracelet on your right arm, and your goal is to go 30 days in a row without complaining verbally. You can complain in your head as much as you want, but verbally. And every time you complain, you have to restart the whole process from zero. Most people, if they ever get to the end, it takes them 9 months to do it. And the reason this is such an important thing is you start to realize when I started doing this as an example, how many times I complained about little things in life. Like just even to make small talk. Oh, the weather's terrible. There was a lot of traffic. And even it took me just to get to 7 days straight, it took me 30 days to do that. And then I couldn't get through the process. But I want to share what's important, something that I remember from that exercise. Because when you complain, you feel worse about yourself And people think worse about you, and you're sort of stuck in that process, especially when you're struggling. There's a lot of complaining. And so they shared a story in the book about this paint store that had a cannonball hanging from the ceiling. And they had this tradition that every time somebody walked in the store, they would take some paint and they would paint one layer on the cannonball. I think it was like 15 years of that doing it. And they showed a picture. How much do you think, after 15 years of every customer just doing one layer of paint, how much do you think that cannonball weighed?
Probably doubled its weight.
It was, and I'll send you the picture of it. It was 2 tons. It was being held outside the store on a crane with all the weight from the paint
Wow.
that all the years. And the analogy is each complaint on its own doesn't weigh a lot. But if you do that for 15 years, externally, internally, it weighs you down like 2 tons. And so the first thing I do in situations like that is I don't complain. And the second thing I do is I write 5 things that I'm grateful for. The third thing that I do is I take 5 pennies, I put them in one pocket, and I look around my team and I find 5 people to give a compliment to. I give gratitude to for them for what they do. I'm doing it just to make myself feel better. And there's a book called the book name is escaping me, but I'll tell you in a second. And it's about giving people compliments and positive reinforcement. What do you think is the number one value when you give other people positive reinforcement?
Well, I would think it makes you, the giver, feel much better.
Well, you're a pro, John, because most people don't say that. And maybe that was the context that we were saying it. But the moment before you give somebody a compliment, generally right away you feel better because you know you're going to compliment them. Oh, it's fill your bucket. It's called filling your bucket. So it's about filling people's bucket. It started as a children's book and then became a business book. And so when I'm down and out, I'll get up on my phone and I'll call somebody in the team and be like, thank you for doing X, Y, and Z. And by filling their bucket, I feel energy. So those are like 3 to 4 small things in that moment that I can't tell you when I'm on the bottom of the wave and I'm feeling like the world is on my shoulders. He continue to help me get through that specific moment. I can also share later on how I keep focus longer term, but like I just wanted to share those those techniques that have been really helpful for me.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit. Tell us about your business.
Lawline is the largest provider of online and continuing legal education. There's 1 million attorneys in the country. About 800,000 of them every year have to take courses in order to keep up with the laws and keep their license current. We make their lives really easy. We do it all online or on our app. And we have about 2,000 courses at any given time that they can take in 50 different practice areas.
Okay. And is this constantly new content that you're putting out there?
Yeah, we do about 500 hours of new content each year, give or take, and in every state.
And these are in audios, videos,
They're
written.
they're all video-based content.
Okay.
We used to have a beautiful studio in Manhattan at our office, but post-COVID, we burned the ships and have people in 12 different states. So now we do it remotely. The downside is maybe the quality, well, yes, the quality is less, but the upside is we're able to have a much more variety of faculty members.
Okay. And your podcasts that are on your website, are those part of it or are those just to get
Yeah. So
people interested?
I run a podcast called Lawyers Who Learn,
Yep.
and there's 2 reasons I started that. Number one, I love engaging and meeting people like you, whether I'm the guest or the host. And a podcast, as you know, is the best opportunity to meet new, interesting people. And my first podcast or TV show that I had in 2006 became the foundation of all the success that I had. from the people that I met, from what I learned and the action that I took. So I decided about a year and a half ago to start Lawyers Who Learn as a way to reconnect with amazing thought leaders in the legal space. And we have formal courses on our course on our website, and the purpose of the podcast was to focus on that 95% of the learning that they do outside of formal course. And so that's why I started. We have 120 episodes or so since we started. And yeah, I feel like a kid in a candy store every time I interview somebody.
Okay. So what, these days of remote work and you have people all over the country now. What are what are some of the techniques you've used to keep everybody productive, enthused when they can't get together?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. We've always had a great culture. We really focus on keeping the culture, I guess, intimate and core values and focus on that. So it starts with who you hire. And we do have a set of core values that we focus on and making sure we have people who truly care for one another and are collaborative. And then it's there is such thing as Zoom fatigue, but we have structures and priorities and processes that we set in place that help people in their career growth. But then we have a lot of social outlets from Slack channels to book clubs to other areas. We also have a really big focus on work-life balance. We have a rotating 4-day work week because we want people to be here for the long term and have more time to spend with their family or on self-improvement or on just resting. And we also have an in-person retreat once a year where we get everyone together. We fly them in somewhere. Our last one was in Bozeman, Montana. We've done Charleston. We've done Philadelphia. We've done a sleepaway camp. This year we're doing Disney World. And even though that's once a year, that helps cement relationships throughout the year. And we originally started as a company in New York City. So even though we're in, 12 different states, there's still about 60% plus of employees who are based in the New York City area. I'm in a real office. That's a real wall. That's not a virtual background. And so people come in and tomorrow, for example, my leadership team is meeting in person in my office, and we're focusing on what we're doing at the retreat in the second half of the year.
Okay. So, uh, other than your travel and you're living abroad for a couple of years, what do you and your family like to do when you're not helping lawyers learn?
Uh, can you hear me?
Yep,
Okay. You froze, but I'll keep going as long as you can hear me. You're still there, right?
I'm here.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll start with this. I have my twins now are going to graduate high school this year and they're going to college. And 80% of the time that you spend in person with your children are before the age of 18. And it's something that I don't take for granted. And one of the biggest benefits of what happened from our 2 years of being abroad, learning a new language, learning a new culture, traveling together. And I will be very honest, like the most important thing that we do as a family is take trips together, whether they're 50 miles or 100 miles away or flying across the world to Argentina or New Zealand or Australia and doing things together and creating these core values and shared memories. And then, of course, on the day to day, like work-life balance is really important. So we have dinner together. We we're we're, we're up in each other's grills a lot, and we from watching shows to throwing keeping our house open for the house that we want them to invite everyone over to and have friends over. And so we really try to be that nice mix of cool parents as well as, leaders for them to try, to be able to look at as who they want to be when they're older.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to get out that we haven't covered already? I mean, you've given some great information. I mean, it's stuff that I think a lot of people don't think of as are the things you've mentioned here today. Uh, and the work-life balance is an important thing that if you're reading about people a lot of them in the corporate world, how they don't use their vacation time and they doesn't seem like they have all that much balance. And especially,
Yeah.
I guess, if they're fearful of if they take off, something's going to happen. But David, it's really important. So I appreciate your insights on that. Any final thoughts?
I'll just, I'll, I always think about impact, and I know a lot of people do, of like what's the impact that they're going to have on their community or the world around them. And I guess what I would say, when we were in Barcelona, we went to Sevilla for a vacation with another family that visited us from the States. And one of the reasons we wanted to go, when my wife and our friend's wife was younger, 2 different years apart, they both coincidentally stayed with the same senora in Sevilla for a semester. And she mentored them and guided them and really gave them an amazing experience. And we decided to go find her 20 years later. We never had a conversation with her. We didn't even know if she was alive, but we both like sort of searched for her apartment. We found the building, we rang the bell. They let us up without even asking who we were. And we didn't even know if it was the right person letting us up. Someone answers the door. It's a young woman. And we asked if Fina was available. She came and she saw us and she was like kind of excited, but didn't give us the energy that we were hoping for. And then as we walk in, Lauren, who's my wife's, who was our friend, she was looking around and she saw on Fina's desk was a picture of her and two young women. And it turns out Lauren was one of those women. And she showed it to Fina, and Fina got so excited and she realized who we were. And we had this big hug. We took all these photos. And what I realized at that moment, Fina was planting seeds 20 years ago with Kelly and with Lauren of of loving, like they lived abroad as well at a different point, of the love for Spain, the love for travel, the love for exploring new things and being all this. And she didn't know 20 years from then they were going to come back as a total of 9 people to thank her for what the impact that she had on her life. And I think what we don't realize is right now we're planting seeds that we don't know we're planting, that in 20 years, 9 people might come to visit you and thank you for the seeds that you planted. So don't always think just because you can't see everything growing that what you're doing, this podcast that you have as an example, me being here as a guest, anybody else who's done something, don't just because you don't see the trees growing doesn't mean you're not planting a lot of seeds.
Uh, that's uh, that's very good. I can relate to that when I talk to past clients who realized how important what we did together was to their lives, and I think we all have that when we do a good job for people. So, uh,
Fantastic.
David, thank you uh, for being on this episode. How do people get a hold of you?
Sure. You can go to 11suitcases.com and you can see more about our story. You can buy the book. I'm also posting on LinkedIn almost daily. So if you put my name in LinkedIn, you can follow me there as well.
Okay, I'll make sure that gets in the show notes also. So,
Awesome.
David, thank you again for being part of our podcast. Some interesting and very valuable life lessons. So, thank you.
Thanks for having me.